Far to the south, in the land of Sheba, nestled in the lush valleys surrounded by mountains, a great queen ruled with unmatched beauty, intelligence, and wealth. Her name was Majesty, the Queen of Sheba. Stories of her wisdom and leadership were as legendary as the golden palaces in which she dwelled. Yet, even with all her achievements, one name had begun to intrigue her beyond measure: King Solomon of Israel. Messengers, traders, and travelers brought news of this remarkable king whose wisdom was said to surpass all others. They spoke of his vast kingdom, his ability to judge with fairness, and the temple he had built for his God. It is said, one of her counselors told her, that Solomon answers riddles no one else can solve and speaks with knowledge as if the gods themselves whisper in his ear. Majesty was skeptical. She was no stranger to flattery and grand tales, but the consistency of the stories piqued her curiosity. A king so wise and prosperous that he can build a temple of gold and cedar? She mused aloud. I must see this for myself. Her decision was swift. She would travel to Jerusalem to meet this Solomon and test his wisdom with her own riddles and questions. It would not be an ordinary visit. She intended to bring a caravan unlike any other, laden with gifts to impress even the greatest of kings. The preparations began immediately. Camels were loaded with gold, spices, and precious jewels. The queen's servants packed fine garments and supplies for the long journey. Sheba's finest craftsmen worked tirelessly to create gifts worthy of a king: intricately carved ivory, exotic perfumes, and golden statues. Makeda's advisors tried to dissuade her. The journey is long and treacherous, Your Majesty, they warned. The deserts are unforgiving, and the mountains are steep. But the queen was resolute. If Solomon's wisdom is truly as great as they say, then the journey will be worth it, she replied. And if it is not, then I shall return with the satisfaction of knowing the truth. After weeks of preparation, the caravan set out from Sheba. It was a breathtaking sight. Dozens of camels carrying gleaming treasures, guards armed with shining swords, and attendants dressed in flowing robes of rich colors. Majesty herself rode atop a golden carriage, her presence commanding awe and respect. The journey was arduous, as her advisors had predicted. They crossed scorching deserts where the sun seemed to hang mercilessly overhead, and they climbed rugged mountains that tested the endurance of both man and beast. But the queen's determination never wavered. At night, as the caravan rested under the stars, she would sit with her closest advisors, pondering the questions she would ask Solomon. She wanted to challenge him, not with simple riddles, but with questions that would reveal the depth of his wisdom. Finally, after weeks of travel, the caravan approached Jerusalem. The sight of the city took the queen's breath away. Its towering walls and bustling streets were unlike anything she had ever seen. At the heart of it all stood Solomon's palace, a magnificent structure that seemed to gleam in the sunlight. News of the queen's arrival spread quickly. Solomon's servants rushed to inform the king, who welcomed the news with a smile. "Prepare a grand reception," he ordered. "Let her see the splendor of Israel." As the caravan entered the city, crowds gathered to catch a glimpse of the legendary Queen of Sheba. Her golden carriage and dazzling treasures left them awestruck. But it was the queen herself, with her regal demeanor and piercing gaze, who captivated their attention. Majesty was escorted to Solomon's palace, where the king awaited her. He stood at the top of a grand staircase, his robes shimmering with gold and his crown glinting in the light. The two monarchs exchanged respectful bows, their eyes meeting in a moment of mutual curiosity. "Welcome to Jerusalem, Queen of Sheba," Solomon said warmly. "It is an honor to host one so renowned for her wisdom and wealth." "And it is an honor to stand before the great King Solomon," Makeda replied. "Your fame has traveled far, and I have come to see if the stories are true." Solomon's smile widened. "Then let us talk," he said, "and may the truth of our words speak louder than the tales of others." Makeda was led into a grand hall filled with the finest furnishings. The air was scented with exotic perfumes, and musicians played softly in the background. Servants brought platters of food and goblets of wine, but the queen's focus was solely on Solomon. She began with simple questions, testing his knowledge of the natural world, history, and philosophy. Solomon answered each one with ease, his words flowing like a river of wisdom. Encouraged, Makeda posed more complex riddles, ones that had stumped the wisest men of her court. Solomon listened intently, his eyes sparkling with understanding. He not only solved her riddles, but explained the reasoning behind his answers, leaving her both amazed and intrigued. As their conversation continued, the queen realized that Solomon's wisdom was not just intellectual. He spoke with a depth of understanding that seemed to come from a higher source. He shared insights about human nature, governance, and even the mysteries of God. "You are unlike any king I have ever met," Makeda admitted. "Your wisdom is not of this world. Tell me, what is the source of your knowledge?" Solomon's expression grew thoughtful. "All that I have comes from the Lord, the God of Israel," he said. "It was He who granted me wisdom when I asked for it, and it is He who guides my steps." Makeda was silent for a moment, her heart stirred by his words. She had come to test Solomon, but now she found herself wanting to learn from him. The sun rose high above the city of Jerusalem, casting a golden glow over the majestic temple and palace Solomon had built. The city buzzed with excitement as word spread. The Queen of Sheba had arrived. Her grand caravan was like nothing anyone had ever seen. Hundreds of camels, donkeys, and servants carried treasures from her far-off kingdom. Gold, spices, and precious jewels gleamed in the sunlight, making the crowd gathered along the city gates gasp in awe. Solomon, standing on the palace steps, watched as the queen dismounted her camel. She was a vision of elegance and power. Her royal robes shimmered in deep blues and golds, her crown glinting with rare gemstones. She held herself with the confidence of someone who ruled her people with wisdom and strength. But in her eyes was a spark of curiosity. She had traveled all this way not just to see the wealth of Solomon, but to challenge his famed wisdom for herself. As she approached, Solomon stepped forward to greet her. "Welcome, Queen of Sheba, to Jerusalem. I trust your journey was safe." She nodded gracefully. "It was long, but your city is as beautiful as they say. I have come to see if your wisdom and wealth are truly as unmatched as I have heard." Solomon smiled, his calm demeanor giving nothing away. "Ask what you will, and may God grant me the wisdom to answer." The queen raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Very well," she said, gesturing for her servants to bring forward her first test. They placed 2 identical garlands of flowers before Solomon, one made of the finest silk, the other of real blossoms. "Tell me, great king," she said, "which of these is real and which is crafted by man?" The court fell silent as Solomon studied the garlands. He walked around them, his hands behind his back, his expression thoughtful. Then, with a small smile, he turned to an attendant. "Open the windows." The large windows of the hall were opened, and within moments, bees began to buzz into the room. They flew straight to the garland of real flowers, ignoring the silk imitation. Solomon gestured toward the garland with the bees. "There is your answer, my queen." The Queen of Sheba's eyes widened and a smile tugged at her lips. Impressive, King Solomon. But that was just the beginning. Over the next several days, the queen posed riddles, puzzles, and questions to Solomon. Each time, he answered with ease, sometimes with humor, other times with profound insight. She tested him with questions about the stars, the workings of the earth, and the nature of humanity. Solomon's answers revealed not only his knowledge, but also a deep understanding of God's creation. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, the queen turned to Solomon. "You truly are blessed, King Solomon. Your wisdom exceeds anything I have heard. But tell me, from where does this wisdom come?" Solomon stopped and looked at the queen, the golden light of the setting sun reflecting in his eyes. "It is not my own Queen of Sheba. When I was young, God appeared to me in a dream and offered me anything I desired. I could have asked for riches or power, but instead, I asked for wisdom to govern his people. He granted my request and gave me more than I could ever have imagined. Everything you see here, my wealth, my power, it is all a gift from the Lord." The queen was silent for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "Then your God must truly be great," she said softly. As the night fell and the stars filled the sky, the Queen of Sheba realized that her visit was more than just an opportunity to test Solomon's wisdom. It was a glimpse into the greatness of the God he served, a God who granted wisdom, wealth, and peace to his chosen servant. But there was still more to see, more to learn. The Queen of Sheba's journey in Jerusalem was far from over. The Queen of Sheba's visit stretched into weeks. Each day brought new marvels, and her amazement grew with every passing moment. Solomon's palace was unlike anything she had ever seen. The walls sparkled with ivory and gold, and the floors were so polished they reflected the faces of those who walked on them. Servants moved gracefully, their robes flowing like water, each step purposeful and precise. But what impressed the queen most wasn't the wealth, it was the order and joy in Solomon's household. Everyone seemed content, from the lowest servant to the highest official. "Happy are your men, and happy are these your servants who stand continually before you and hear your wisdom," she said to Solomon one evening as they dined in the grand hall. Solomon smiled humbly. "Their joy comes from knowing they serve a greater purpose. God's wisdom guides all we do here." Despite her growing admiration, the Queen of Sheba had not come empty-handed. One morning, she ordered her servants to bring forward her gifts. A parade of camels entered the courtyard, each carrying treasures from her kingdom. There were spices so rare their fragrance filled the air, gold that gleamed in the sunlight, and gemstones that sparkled like stars. "These are tokens of my esteem, King Solomon," she said as she stood beside the treasures. "Your wisdom has proven greater than all the stories I've heard, and your God has blessed you abundantly. But tell me, what can one give to a man who already has everything?" Solomon chuckled lightly, his voice warm. "Your gifts are generous, Queen of Sheba, and they will be cherished. But the greatest gift is the wisdom and truth we share, that cannot be weighed in gold or measured in jewels." Her heart stirred at his words. The treasures she brought, though magnificent, paled in comparison to the peace and knowledge she had found in Solomon's presence. One day, Solomon took her to the temple he had built for the Lord. The grand structure stood like a beacon, its gold-plated walls gleaming under the sun. Inside, the aroma of incense filled the air, and the sound of choirs singing praises to God echoed through the halls. The queen was overwhelmed by the beauty and the reverence she felt within the sacred space. "Your God truly dwells here," she whispered as they stood before the altar. "I have never seen or felt anything like this." As they walked through the temple, Solomon explained the meaning behind every detail, the intricate carvings, the symbolic placement of the sacred objects, and the ceremonies that honored God. The Queen of Sheba marveled at the wisdom and dedication it must have taken to create such a place. "Blessed be the Lord your God, who delighted in you, setting you on the throne of Israel," she exclaimed. "Because the Lord loved Israel forever. He made you king to do justice and righteousness." That evening, as they sat in Solomon's private garden under the starlit sky, the queen shared her thoughts. "Your God is unlike any I have worshipped. He is not confined to idols or temples, but is living, guiding, and providing wisdom. I see now why your people prosper and why you reign with such peace and understanding." Solomon listened, his face thoughtful. "It is as you say. The Lord's ways are higher than ours. He has given me wisdom not for my own sake, but to guide his people and to make his name known among the nations. And perhaps, Queen of Sheba, your journey here was not merely to marvel at riches or wisdom, but to glimpse the greatness of God." The queen nodded slowly, her mind racing with everything she had seen and learned. Her heart was full, and she knew her life would never be the same. As her visit drew closer to its end, the Queen of Sheba reflected on the lessons she would take back to her kingdom. Yet, she sensed her journey was part of something far greater than herself, a bridge between nations, a testimony to the living God. The final days of the Queen of Sheba's visit were filled with reflection, learning, and preparation for her return journey. Though her time in Solomon's court had been brief, it left an indelible mark on her heart and mind. Every moment she spent with the king revealed new depths of wisdom, faith, and understanding. She often found herself marveling at the beauty and order of his palace, the harmony of his people, and the profound reverence they had for their God. The morning before her departure, the queen requested one final audience with Solomon. They met in the palace's serene inner garden, a place of tranquility, adorned with blooming flowers, gentle fountains, and the hum of honeybees. The queen wore a flowing gold robe, and her presence radiated authority mixed with humility. "King Solomon," she began, her voice steady but carrying the weight of emotion, "I came here as a queen, seeking answers. Yet I leave as a student who has learned more than I ever expected. Your wisdom has answered my questions, but it has also awakened something deeper within me. Your God. He is unlike the gods of my people. He is living, active, and present. I see now why you and your people prosper." Solomon smiled gently, his expression thoughtful. "Queen of Sheba, the wisdom you have found is not my own, but comes from the Lord, the Creator of all. He desires for all nations to know Him and to walk in His ways. Your journey here is part of His greater plan, one that stretches far beyond what we can see." The queen's eyes glistened with tears, though she did not shed them. "I will return to my kingdom and share what I have learned, but I am troubled. My people are bound to their idols and old traditions. How do I help them see the truth I have seen?" Solomon leaned forward, his voice steady and filled with encouragement. "Begin with your example, Queen of Sheba. Let the wisdom you have gained guide your rule. Show kindness, justice, and mercy, for these reflect the character of God. The light of truth is like a flame in the darkness. Even a small flame can lead many to safety. The queen nodded slowly, absorbing his words. Your advice is wise, as always. I only hope I am strong enough to fulfill this calling. You are, Solomon assured her. The fact that you came here seeking wisdom shows the strength of your heart. Trust in God to guide you, for He has already begun His work through you. The next morning, the palace courtyard was alive with activity. Servants and attendants packed the queen's caravan, loading her camels with the many gifts Solomon had bestowed upon her: gold, spices, fine linens, and rare woods. But it was the intangible gifts that she valued most: the wisdom, the knowledge of God, and the vision of a kingdom built on faith and righteousness. Before she mounted her camel, the queen took one last walk through the palace gardens, as if committing every detail to memory. She marveled at the intricately carved stone benches, the vibrant flowers swaying gently in the breeze, and the peaceful sound of water flowing in the fountains. These symbols of beauty and order reminded her of Solomon's God, a God of creation, balance, and purpose. Solomon met her at the gates, accompanied by his attendants. The queen stood before him, her demeanor regal yet humble. King Solomon, she said, her voice steady, I leave with more than treasures. I leave with wisdom that cannot be measured. Your God has shown me a new way to see the world, one that I will carry with me for the rest of my days. Solomon bowed his head slightly. May the Lord bless you on your journey, Queen of Sheba, and may He bless your kingdom with His truth and light. Go in peace, knowing that your visit here was not by chance, but by divine purpose. The queen smiled, her expression one of gratitude and resolve. You have my thanks, King Solomon, and though I leave today, the bond between our peoples will endure. The caravan began its journey, the camels swaying as they carried their precious cargo. The queen turned back one last time, her gaze meeting Solomon's. It was a silent farewell, heavy with meaning. As the palace faded into the horizon, she felt a mixture of sadness and determination. She was leaving behind a place of profound beauty and wisdom, but she was returning to her kingdom with a mission: to lead her people toward a brighter, truer path. The journey home was long, and the queen spent much of it in quiet reflection. She replayed her conversations with Solomon, especially his teachings about God's justice, mercy, and love. She thought about the harmony she had witnessed in his kingdom, a reflection of a deeper spiritual order. When she finally arrived in her land, the queen wasted no time. She called her advisors and shared with them the wisdom she had learned. She spoke of Solomon's God, a God of creation and compassion, a God who desired justice and righteousness. Her people listened with curiosity and respect, for they could see the change in their queen, a newfound sense of purpose and conviction. The queen began to implement changes in her kingdom, inspired by Solomon's example. She established fairer laws, promoted kindness and generosity, and encouraged her people to seek wisdom and truth. Though she faced resistance at times, she held fast to her vision, trusting in the lessons she had learned. Over time, the story of the Queen of Sheba's journey to Solomon became a legend, passed down through generations. It was a story of seeking and finding, of questions and answers, of a ruler who was not afraid to humble herself in the pursuit of truth. And so, the legacy of her visit lived on, not just in the treasures exchanged or the alliances formed, but in the light of wisdom that spread like ripples on a pond, reaching far beyond what she could have imagined.